The night I realized my own body had become a countdown clock. If you'd walked into our apartment that night, you might have thought we were just another couple on the couch, watching TV in the half-light. Henry's arm around my shoulders, my legs tucked under me, the glow of his phone lighting up his face more than the screen did. From the outside, it probably would have looked ordinary. Inside my head, there was a clock screaming. 16 weeks. 4 weeks until the legal deadline. 28 days until my choice could be taken away from me by a law, by a date on a piece of paper, or by the man sitting right next to me. "Did you sleep okay?" Henry asked softly, fingers tracing lazy circles over my upper arm. I stared at the muted TV. Not really. He didn't seem to hear the edge in my voice. "Any changes?" His hand slipped a little higher, then across my chest, familiar now in a way that made my skin crawl. "Do they feel different at all?" I swallowed. My throat was dry. "No, nothing." He tried to hide his disappointment, but I'd known him for 5 years. I saw it in the way his mouth tightened for half a second before he forced a smile. "Maybe it just needs more time," he said. "Bodies are weird. Some women don't start producing anything until later. We still have time before 20 weeks, babe. We don't have to rush this." My heart started pounding in my ears. I could feel my pulse in my fingertips, in the base of my skull, in the small, constant ache in my lower back that had become my new normal. He was talking about my pregnancy like it was an experiment, a window of opportunity, a limited time offer tied to my organs. I stared at his phone lying face up on the coffee table, the screen dim, but still showing the last thing he'd Googled earlier that evening. How early can breast milk start during pregnancy? That search result sat there next to the empty wine glass I'd abandoned, like evidence in a trial I hadn't realized I was in. 16 weeks pregnant, no kids, no future baby names, no nursery mood boards. Just a deadline on a clinic's website and a boyfriend who was really excited that my body might start doing something he found sexually thrilling. "I was thinking," Henry said lightly, as if we were talking about vacation plans, "maybe. Instead of 18 weeks, we could push it to 19, just to see if anything starts by then. And if not, we schedule it right away. I swear. 1 more week isn't going to change anything." That was the moment it snapped into focus. He wasn't going to stop asking for 1 more week until there were no weeks left. I watched his mouth move, watched him smile, watched him reach for me, like I was both his girlfriend and some kind of fantasy he'd been waiting years to live out. And for the first time, I wasn't just scared of being pregnant. I was scared of him. Scared of the way I'd let my yes become a weapon against myself. Scared of how many decisions I'd made drunk, high, tired, telling myself it was fine because he loved me and because this was probably my only pregnancy anyway. 16 weeks, 4 weeks left. If I didn't find my voice now, I knew exactly how this story would end. Not with a choice, but with a birth I never wanted, in a body I'd slowly surrendered one compromise at a time. I turned my head and looked at him fully, really looked at him, at the excitement he was trying to keep polite, at the softness in his voice that suddenly felt like pressure wrapped in cotton. "Henry," I said, my voice shaking, "we need to talk about the deadline." He smiled, like this was the opening to a cute couple conversation. He had no idea this was the moment I stopped being an accessory to his fantasy and started fighting for my life back. If you'd asked me 2 years ago to describe Henry, I would have said he was the safest thing in my life. We met in one of those dingy campus bars that always smelled faintly of spilled beer and cheap perfume. I was 22, killing time between classes and a late shift, pretending I wasn't already exhausted by everything. He was 27 back then, leaning against the bar, like he'd been born knowing how to take up space without trying. We didn't hook up, we didn't flirt much, we just talked. I remember him saying, "You're easy to talk to, you know that?" while I stirred a watery rum and Coke with my straw. "You mean I overshare?" I'd laughed. "Yeah," he grinned, but in a good way. We became friends first. Real friends. The kind that send memes at 2 a.m. and complain about professors and bosses and how adulthood feels like a prank. We'd meet up between my classes and his shifts, splitting fries we couldn't really afford, talking about music and movies and everything that felt bigger than our lives. Back then, my mental health was already a mess, but I made it look like a personality trait. "I'm fine," I'd say, shrugging. "Just tired." I was always just tired. Henry had this casual confidence I envied, a job that paid better than any of my part-time gigs, an apartment that didn't have mold in the bathroom, friends, plans, a future he seemed sure of. Me? I had loan debt, a half-finished degree, and a mother who loved me but always sounded disappointed on the phone. I kept going anyway. Classes, work, repeat. Somewhere in that rhythm, Henry and I settled into a comfortable place. He'd tell me about the women he was seeing the way people talk about movies, lightly, with distance, like nothing really touched him. There's this girl I'm hooking up with, he told me one afternoon, sitting on a park bench while I chewed the inside of my cheek, trying not to think about a midterm I was pretty sure I'd blown. Are you actually dating or just... I wiggled my fingers in the air. He smirked. Just. She's cool. No expectations, no drama. That cool, no drama girl was the one who got pregnant. He told me about it like he was reporting the weather. She's keeping it, he said, staring at his coffee cup. I offered to pay half to, end it. She said no, so I'll send money, legal minimum, some extras, but I'm not doing the dad thing. I remember nodding slowly, trying to match his tone. Are you okay with that? Yeah, he shrugged. I told you I don't want kids, ever. This just confirms it. That should have been the end of the story. Instead, a few weeks later, he mentioned, almost casually, we're still sleeping together. I blinked. Wait, she's pregnant, and you're still... Yeah, he laughed a little. She's fine with it. It's different, but it's fine. I'd thought it was weird, but it wasn't my body, my pregnancy, my business. I told myself that a lot back then. Not my business, not my problem. Later, mutual friends told me about the party at her place after she had the baby. Henry drunk, high, standing in the kitchen with a red cup, bragging. He said he tasted her breast milk, one of our friends told me the next day, half laughing, half making a face. Like it was funny, said it wasn't as bad as he thought. I'd rolled my eyes and changed the subject. It was gross, sure, but people say dumb things when they're wasted. I filed it away as Henry being Henry and kept being his friend. They stopped seeing each other when the baby was around 5 or 6 months old. Things settled. Time blurred. About a year later, Henry and I kissed for the first time. It happened in his kitchen, stupidly domestic. I was sitting on the counter, swinging my feet, ranting about a professor who'd given me a C on a paper I'd stayed up all night writing. He's a clown, Henry said, stepping between my knees to reach the cabinet behind me. He smelled like coffee and laundry detergent and the faintest hint of weed. You're smarter than half those people in your class anyway. Flattery doesn't fix my GPA, I muttered, but I was smiling. He looked at me for a second too long. What? I asked. Nothing, he said. Just, I like you. And then he kissed me. It wasn't fireworks. It wasn't some movie moment. It was warm and familiar and inevitable, like we'd just turned a corner we'd been walking toward for 2 years without noticing. Dating him felt easy at first. We already knew each other's bad habits. I knew he left socks everywhere and ghosted texts when he was stressed. He knew I stayed up too late and drank too much when I was anxious. It felt like cheating, like skipping the awkward getting-to-know-you phase. A few months into our relationship, we were lying in bed, legs tangled, the room lit only by the street lamp glow outside. He brought up the party story again. You remember when I told you about my friend with benefits and the whole breast milk thing? He asked, almost shy. I snorted. Kinda hard to forget. He hesitated, then said quietly, I wasn't just joking that night. I turned my head. What do you mean? He stared at the ceiling. I actually liked it. I don't know. I thought it would be gross, but it wasn't. It was hot. Sometimes when we were together, I'd get turned on by the idea of it. He gave a small, nervous laugh. Is that weird? I'd paused, mind flicking through every article I'd ever read about kinks and fetishes and normal versus not normal. Everyone has their thing, I said finally. It's not hurting anyone. He relaxed. Yeah, I guess. After that, I noticed the way his attention stayed on my chest during sex. Longer, more intense than seemed typical. His hands, his mouth, his eyes. I didn't mind. I liked being wanted. I liked the way he looked at me, like I was the only person in the room. If it made him happy and didn't hurt me, why not? We moved in together 2 years ago. His place, technically, but he cleared out a closet for my clothes and gave me half the bathroom cabinet and called it ours. It was the closest thing I'd ever had to stability. A regular bed, a couch that didn't come from the curb, a kitchen that felt like home because my mug was in the cabinet. One night, a class was canceled and I came home early. The apartment was quiet except for a faint sound coming from the bedroom. When I pushed the door open, Henry practically jumped, slamming his laptop shut. Hey, I said slowly, what were you watching? Just stuff, he muttered, cheeks red. I'd already seen enough in the split second before he closed it. The video paused on the screen had been unmistakable. A woman, heavy pregnant, breasts leaking, a man's mouth. Is that? I pointed vaguely at my own chest, my eyebrows raised. He sighed, rubbed his face, then sat up. Okay, yeah. Look, I have this thing about breasts and lactation. It started with her, with that whole situation. I know it's weird, but hey, I cut in, sitting on the edge of the bed. People watch all kinds of stuff. I don't care. You don't? He looked genuinely surprised. I shook my head. As long as you're not cheating or hurting anyone, I really don't. Relief washed over his features. You're amazing. You know that? I wasn't. I just wanted to be easy, chill, the kind of girlfriend who doesn't make things hard, the kind of girlfriend who didn't give him reasons to leave. I've never wanted kids. I knew that before Henry, before anything. Ever since I was a teenager, the idea of pregnancies made my chest tighten. I liked my body the way it was, mine, not a project, not a vessel, just mine. So I went on the pill. I took it religiously, same time every day, alarm set on my phone like it was a sacred ritual. Between that and condoms when we remembered, I told myself we were safe enough. Meanwhile, my mental health quietly slid downhill. I drank more, smoked more, told myself I was just taking the edge off, even when the edges started blurring into entire days, lost in a haze of wine and half-finished assignments. Henry would frown when he saw the empty bottles sometimes. You okay? He'd ask, pressing a kiss to my temple. I'm fine, I'd say, just tired. It felt like a script we both knew by heart. We had routines, takeout on Fridays, sex most weekends, lazy mornings when neither of us had anywhere to be. I called it a life. I called it love. I told myself I was lucky to have it. I didn't realize that slowly, quietly, without either of us saying it out loud, my body had become the center of his favorite fantasy. And that somewhere inside all those I'm fines and compromises, I'd started to believe my comfort was negotiable as long as he was happy. The first crack in everything didn't come with a scream or a fight. It came quietly, so quietly I didn't understand it was the beginning of something enormous. It started with my body. 2 months before the positive tests, I began waking up nauseous, the kind of nausea that felt like a slow tide rolling up the inside of my throat. I thought it was the wine, or stress, or the weed, or all of it, mixed together like a chemical cocktail I'd been feeding myself without thinking. Maybe you need to slow down, Henry said one night, brushing my hair back as I gagged over the bathroom sink. I'm fine, I whispered, just tired. I said it automatically. I didn't even realize how often I used those words. Then there were the dizzy spells, the random moments when I'd stand too fast and the world would tilt, my vision flickering like a dying bulb. Henry joked, "You okay, Grandma?" But he watched me a beat longer than was funny. I ignored it. Ignoring things had become my specialty. Then one night, we were scrolling through old videos on my phone. Clips of us goofing around, me singing terribly in the car, Henry pretending he was too cool for karaoke. He paused on one video, squinting. You look different, he said. What? How? He pinched the screen, zooming in on my chest. Bigger. In this video, I mean. You look bigger now. A cold wave slid through me. What are you talking about? I'm serious, he leaned closer. Look. My heart dropped into my stomach. Because he wasn't wrong. Because suddenly the nausea and dizziness and the weird heaviness in my body snapped into place like puzzle pieces I'd been refusing to see. I felt the blood drain from my face. I need to go to the store. I didn't even put on shoes. I just grabbed my keys and left, heart pounding like I was sprinting from a crime scene. 3 tests, 3 positives. I sat on the bathroom floor, the cold tile seeping through my leggings, the tests lined up in front of me, like little white judges delivering the same verdict. Pregnant. Pregnant, pregnant. When Henry knocked on the door, asking if I was okay, I opened it and held the tests out like evidence in a trial I hadn't prepared for. He stared at them, not for a second or two, for a long time. Then he finally said, "What do you want to do?" There was no hesitation in me. I need to end it. He nodded. Okay, we'll take care of it. We. That word felt like a warm blanket at the time. It would take weeks for me to realize it was actually rope. The clinic appointment was scheduled for the following week because that was the earliest they had. A normal wait, they said. Standard. It felt like a century. During that week, everything in me started to unravel. I stopped going to class, stopped answering texts, drifted from room to room like my body was haunted and my mind was somewhere else entirely. Henry tried to help, bringing food, sitting beside me, rubbing my back. He didn't push, not then. But I caught him looking at my chest more, a lot more. I told myself it was my imagination. I told myself he was processing too. But then, little comments started slipping out. "Your body's already changing," he murmured one night, his hand drifting upward. "It's kind of amazing." "I hate it," I muttered. "I don't," he said softly. My stomach nodded. Then the ultrasound came. 14 weeks. I felt like someone had punched through my ribcage and squeezed my lungs. 14. I had missed my body sliding into the second trimester like someone missing a train pulling out of the station. Henry was quiet in this car afterward. Too quiet. At home, while I stared blankly at the wall, he made a joke, soft, teasing. "Well, at least your chest is going to get even bigger." I didn't laugh. He kept talking, kept circling around the topic like a shark testing the water. "You know," he said gently, "some women start producing milk before the baby comes." I remember turning my head, slow, mechanical. "Why are you telling me that?" He hesitated just enough for me to feel the shift in the air. "I've just wondered what it would be like," he said, "with someone I actually love." My entire spine went cold. That was the moment I realized he wasn't just adjusting to the pregnancy. He was wanting it, not the baby, the changes in me. He looked up deadlines on his phone, showed me articles, talked about possibilities, timing. What if we just waited a little longer? And somewhere in that week, the seed of the conflict, the one that would swallow everything, was planted. Henry didn't want the baby, but he wanted the pregnancy, my body, my timeline, my window. And he wanted it long enough for his fantasy to come true. The night everything truly ruptured didn't begin like a disaster. It began with quiet, too quiet, the kind that presses against your skin until you feel like something underneath it is shifting. I remember lying on the couch, curled into myself, the room dim except for the soft yellow glow of the lamp. Henry walked in holding 2 mugs of tea. The steam curled upward like something alive, and for a moment I wanted to disappear into the air with it. "You should drink," he said softly, handing me a mug. I didn't reach for it. He sat next to me, thigh pressed against mine, and I felt myself stiffen without meaning to. 14 weeks, 6 days until 15, 27 days until the legal deadline slammed shut around me like steel bars. He took a slow sip of his tea, setting the other mug on the coffee table beside mine. "You've been quiet all day." "I've been thinking," I said. He turned toward me, brows knitting in concern. "About what?" "About the deadline." His face didn't fall, not exactly, but something flickered, like a mask slipping for half a second before he pulled it back up. "We still have time," he said gently. Too gently, like he was soothing a child who didn't understand the big picture. "No," I whispered, "we don't." He reached out, brushing my hair back. His touch didn't feel comforting this time. It felt strategic. "Baby," he murmured, "I promised you. If we get close to the deadline, we'll go through with it. You know that." But the way he said close made my skin crawl. Close meant he'd push it past the point of safety. Close meant the window shrinking around me until it wasn't a window anymore. He exhaled slowly, and then, carefully, he slid his hand across my chest again. It was subtle, gentle, but unmistakably intentional. "Have you noticed anything?" he asked. I pushed his hand away. His eyes widened like he couldn't understand the gesture. "Hey, what's wrong?" "What's wrong?" My voice cracked. "Henry, you're treating my pregnancy like some kind of event you're excited for." "I'm not." "Yes, you are." My throat felt raw. "Every day you're asking about my chest. Every day you're waiting, hoping, watching me like my body is going to perform for you." He swallowed, jaw tightening. "That's not fair." "No?" I forced myself to look at him. Really look. "You asked me to wait, to push the deadline, to see if I start producing milk. Because you think this is your chance to live out some fantasy you had with another woman, a woman who had your child." He flinched. His eyes darted away. There it was, the truth, landing between us like a lit match. "You said you'd only wait until 18 weeks, I continued. "Now you're saying 19. Next week it'll be 20. Then what, Henry? 21, when it's too late?" "I'm not trying to trap you," he said quickly. "You already are." His face crumpled. "Sweetheart, that's not—" "Stop calling me that." He shut his mouth. The silence between us felt thick, suffocating. He leaned forward, looking desperate, his voice low and trembling. I thought this was something special we could share, something intimate, something that This is my body, I snapped. My pain, my fear, my future. Not a kink experiment. Not a moment for you to explore your curiosity. Not something I'm supposed to sacrifice my autonomy for. His eyes filled with something I couldn't read. Hurt? Frustration? Disbelief? You agreed, he whispered. Yes, I said, because I wasn't thinking clearly, because I was drunk, high, terrified, because I thought you loved me more than your fetish. He recoiled as if I'd slapped him. That's not fair, he repeated quietly, shaking his head. You know I love you. I've shown you. You pressured me, I said. Gently, softly, with kindness, but pressure is still pressure. He dropped his face into his hands. I took a shaky breath. Henry, I need to schedule the procedure now, not later, not next week, not when you're ready, when I am. He lifted his head slowly. You're serious? Yes. He stared at me. Long. Too long. And in that stare, something inside him hardened. The fear faded, the softness evaporated. His expression became still, controlled. Fine, he said quietly, if that's what you want. But his tone didn't match the words. His tone said betrayal. His tone said resentment. His tone said this isn't over. He stood, pacing the room slowly, rubbing the back of his neck. You don't have to make this decision right now, he muttered. You're emotional. You're overwhelmed. I felt my heart thud painfully. I've made it. He turned to me, eyes sharp. Why are you doing this? Why are you acting like I'm the enemy? Because you're not listening, I whispered. Not to what I need, not to what I'm terrified of. You're listening to your fantasy. He pressed his lips together, chest rising and falling. Okay, he said finally. Okay, we'll schedule it. But the way he looked at me, it was the first time I'd ever felt unsafe in his presence. Not physically, emotionally, psychologically, because in that moment I realized the inciting incident wasn't just the pregnancy. It was the discovery that the man who said he loved me loved the idea of my pregnant body more, loved what it could give him, not what I needed to survive. I didn't fall apart the way I always imagined women do in dramatic stories. No screaming, no throwing things, no cinematic collapse onto the floor. Instead, I went quiet, dangerously quiet. The kind of quiet that feels like your mind is packing a suitcase in the dark, preparing to leave a version of yourself behind. For hours after that conversation, I moved through the apartment like a ghost. I washed dishes I didn't remember using. I folded laundry I didn't remember wearing. I stared at the wall while the kettle boiled dry, its shriek echoing in the kitchen until Henry rushed in to turn it off. Baby, he said gently, touching my shoulder. My muscles tensed. He felt it. I know he did. His hand paused there, suspended on my shoulder blade, like he was trying to decide whether to hold on or back away. You're scaring me, he whispered. Good, a dark part of me thought. Maybe now you understand how terrified I've been. But instead of saying that, I just murmured, I'm tired. I always said that. It was my reflexive shield, my universal excuse. I'm tired, I'm tired, I'm tired. Henry followed me around the apartment like someone trying to catch shadows. He didn't yell, he didn't plead. He just hovered, touching my back, brushing his fingers along my arm, asking if I needed water, tea, soup, anything. Every touch made my skin prickle. Every gentle gesture felt wrong, like sugar poured over rot. Because now I saw the truth. He wasn't comforting me out of love. He was comforting me out of fear that I was slipping from his control. Around midnight, I slipped into the bathroom and sat on the edge of the tub, hugging myself. My chest ached, sore, swollen, tender, and I hated the way it felt like a reminder of everything I was trying to escape. I turned on the shower just to hear something louder than my thoughts. Steam fogged the mirror. My reflection blurred, fractured. I barely looked like myself anymore. My skin was pale, my eyes were swollen, my shoulders hunched like I was trying to take up less space. My body, my own body, felt like a cage. When I finally stepped out, wrapped in a towel, Henry was sitting on the bed, shoulders slumped, eyes red like he'd been crying. Can we talk? He asked quietly. The old me, the one who bent until she broke, would have sat down and absorbed every feeling he poured onto me. But something inside me had shifted. What do you want to talk about? I asked, voice flat. He took a shaky breath. I didn't know you felt that way. I didn't know I was pushing. You didn't say anything. That sentence, you didn't say anything, hit me like a slap. That's not fair, I whispered. I'm not trying to be unfair. He raked a hand through his hair. I thought we were doing this together. You agreed, and you never acted upset about it. My laugh came out hollow. Henry, I was drinking myself to sleep every night. I wasn't agreeing. I was drowning. He winced. I should have noticed, he murmured. I should have, I don't know, asked more, checked more. I never wanted to make you feel trapped. But he had, softly, sweetly, one request at a time. I sat on the edge of the bed, leaving a gap between us that he didn't cross. I'm scheduling the procedure, I said quietly. This week. He nodded, too quickly, too eagerly. Okay, yes, we'll go. Of course we will. I almost believed him. Almost. But then he added, with a hopeful smile that made my stomach twist, we still have a little time before that, though, just a few days. If anything changes, we'll know. There it was, the crack widening, the mask slipping, the subtle tug on the leash. My breath caught. Henry, stop. Stop. This time my voice didn't waver. His shoulders sank. Silence pressed between us, thick enough to choke on. After a long moment, he whispered, Do you still love me? The question shouldn't have paralyzed me, but it did. Because I didn't know. I didn't know where love ended and fear began. I didn't know where intimacy ended and manipulation began. I didn't know when my wants had silently become secondary to his fantasies. I didn't even know if I knew myself anymore. So I said nothing. And my silence was louder than any answer. Henry leaned back slowly, his face crumpling, not in anger, but in a wounded, fragile heartbreak that might have gutted me months ago. Now it only made me tired. Finally, he whispered, Tell me what you need from me. I swallowed hard. I need you, I said, to stop thinking about what this pregnancy does for you, and start thinking about what it's doing to me. His face fell, but for the first time, I said what I needed. And that was the beginning of a different kind of earthquake, the one that would break the whole foundation. The days after that conversation blurred into one long smear of dread and exhaustion. I woke up sore every morning, back aching, stomach tight, chest heavy, and each day felt like a countdown I couldn't stop staring at. 17 weeks was no longer a number, it was a threat. Henry tried to act normal, tried too hard. He made breakfast every morning, asked how I slept, sent me little messages during the day. Do you need anything? Pain bad today? Thinking of you. If someone had walked into our lives mid-sentence, they might have thought he was the supportive boyfriend, the caring partner, the steady presence. But underneath the sweetness, I could feel it, an undercurrent pulling at me, subtle but relentless. Because every conversation still looped back to one subject, my body. Any new sensations? He'd ask, like he was checking on a science project. Your chest looks fuller today. Does it feel different? Are you sure nothing's happening? His eyes always drifted there, even when he tried not to. Even when he caught himself looking and forced his gaze away, pretending he was focused on my face. I could feel the clock tightening around us, around me. The pressure begins. 2 days after our talk, Henry came home from work and found me curled on the couch, hugging a pillow against my stomach. He knelt beside me instantly. Is it bad again? I nodded. Cramping. That's normal, right? His voice was light, but his jaw was tight. Normal doesn't mean comfortable, I muttered. He exhaled shakily, then put a hand on my thigh. Hey, I've been thinking. Maybe we shouldn't rush the appointment. You're already scheduled for the end of the week. Why stress yourself before then? My spine stiffened. I want it done as soon as possible. I know, he said, rubbing my leg gently, but you're scared and overwhelmed. Maybe it'll help if we just breathe for a few more days, figure things out calmly. No, I whispered. He pulled back like the word physically stung him. Okay, sorry. I just want you to be sure. But that was the problem. I was sure he wasn't letting me be. The conversations get heavier. That night, while I was half asleep, he slipped his arm under my head and spoke quietly into my hair. Do you think, he asked, that maybe, deep down, part of you is curious too? My eyes snapped open. No, I said. But your body... My body isn't the point. He grew quiet, tension vibrating through him like a drawn wire. Finally, he whispered, I just don't understand why you wouldn't want to see what happens. Because I'm not an experiment. Because this is trauma for me, not arousal. Because I don't want to be pregnant at all, let alone for a fetish. But I didn't say any of that. I just turned away. He didn't touch me again that night. Then came the family interference. The following afternoon, while Henry was at work, his phone buzzed on the counter. I didn't mean to look, but his mom's name flashed across the screen, and curiosity overrode exhaustion. A text preview glowed. Tell her not to make rash decisions. She'll regret it. Women get emotional in these situations. My stomach dropped. Another message appeared. Why isn't she being more considerate of how you feel? You're involved too. My hand shook. A third message. She owes you a real discussion before making choices that affect both of you. I felt sick. I didn't go looking for the rest of the conversation, but I didn't have to. I already knew the narrative. I was the unreasonable one. I was the emotional one. I was the one disrupting Henry's life. The fetus, his feelings, his desires, they mattered. My terror didn't. When Henry came home, I didn't say anything. I couldn't. If I opened my mouth, I was scared of what would come out. He greeted me with a bright, too eager smile. "Hey, baby." And I realized then his mother wasn't pushing him. He had already told her everything. He wanted her backup. He wanted validation. He wanted pressure applied from every angle except his own hands. My body becomes a battleground. 3 days before the appointment, the cramping grew worse. A stabbing pressure low in my abdomen. I curled on the bathroom floor, holding my knees to my chest. Henry found me and knelt down, panic in his voice. "Why didn't you call me? Oh my God, sweetheart." I flinched when he touched my back. He froze. Did I do something wrong?" His voice cracked. I almost felt bad for him. Almost. But then he whispered, "Maybe your body is preparing. Maybe it's starting. Maybe this is—" "Stop." The word ripped out of me like a thread pulled too hard. He shut his mouth instantly. The fear in his eyes twisted something in my chest. But I'd learned. His fear wasn't about me. It was about losing his chance. He helped me to bed and sat beside me, silent, tense. Then he said the sentence that broke everything open. "Can't we just wait? Just a little longer? If something happens, don't you want to know?" I stared at him. "No," I whispered. He swallowed. "But what if I never get another chance?" "Henry, stop." He exhaled shakily, rubbed his face, and muttered, "You don't understand what this means to me." And that was when something inside me snapped. "You're right," I said softly. "I don't." He looked up. "Because you're not the one whose body is changing. You're not the one who might miss the deadline. You're not the one who feels like a ticking time bomb. You're not the one who's terrified." He opened his mouth. I kept going. "You're not scared of giving birth. You're scared of losing your fantasy." The silence afterward wasn't silence. It was the sound of a relationship cracking down the middle. The emotional shift intensifies. After that, Henry became overly gentle, too attentive, too careful, tiptoeing around me, like I was something fragile he wanted to keep intact just long enough. But underneath it all, the pressure didn't stop. It just got quieter, more insidious, a hand lingering too long on my chest, a hopeful glance any time I winced, a soft, "Are you sure nothing's starting?" A whispered, "Maybe we could go at 19 weeks instead." He never said please. He didn't have to. His hope filled every room like humidity, thick, suffocating, impossible to ignore. And beneath it all, something inside me hardened. Fear stopped being vague. It became solid, concrete. Because now I knew Henry wasn't simply hoping. He was waiting. Waiting for my body to change. Waiting for biology to defeat my deadline. Waiting for time to tip the scales in his favor. Waiting for me to lose control. And if I didn't take it back soon, I knew exactly how this story would end. The breaking point didn't arrive with a fight. It didn't come from one big argument or explosion. It came from exhaustion. Bone-deep, soul-heavy exhaustion. The kind that makes the world feel dimmer. Like someone turned the brightness all the way down and your brain can't remember where the switch is. By the time I reached 17 weeks, I wasn't living anymore. I was enduring. My back throbbed constantly. My stomach cramped unpredictably. Nausea crawled up my throat at random hours. And worst of all, my mind felt fogged, thick, like breathing through wool. I spent most of my days in Henry's bed, curled on my side, the curtains drawn tight. The room smelled like stale tea and the faint scent of Henry's cologne lingering on the sheets. A smell that once comforted me, but now made me claustrophobic. My phone vibrated nonstop. Professors, classmates, unpaid bills, unanswered emails. I ignored all of it. Once, my academic advisor called 3 times in a row. I silenced my phone and pulled the blanket over my head. The world outside didn't exist anymore. Or if it did, I wasn't part of it. Henry was everywhere. Every time I opened my eyes, he was there, kneeling beside the bed, sliding food toward me, brushing hair from my forehead, asking for updates I didn't want to give. "Any pain today? How's your chest feel? Sore? Heavy? Are you leaking at all? Even a little?" It could happen any day now. We still have time. Still have... Each question chipped away at me. It was like being monitored by someone who loved the data more than the patient. Sometimes he'd sit on the edge of the bed and watch me sleep. I could feel his gaze before I fully woke, like a weight on my skin. He'd smile softly when I opened my eyes, but there was hunger behind it. Not sexual hunger. Something worse. Anticipation. Expectation. Possibility. Nights were the hardest. One night, nearly 17 and a half weeks, I woke up gasping. My lower back spasmed so violently it felt like someone had reached inside my spine and twisted. Henry jolted awake, instantly alert. "What's wrong? What happened?" "Back. Hurts," I breathed, curling in on myself. He placed a hand on my chest, of course, and whispered, "Is anything coming out?" My entire ribcage froze. "No," I whispered harshly, shoving his hand away. He blinked, startled. Sorry, I know what you just meant." He grabbed my hand, holding it tight. "Baby, I'm sorry. I'm just worried. You're in pain. I want to understand what your body's doing." "What my body is doing," I repeated quietly, "is trying to survive." He flinched. But not enough. Not enough to stop. The loneliness became unbearable. At one point, lying in the dark, I pressed my hand to my stomach. It was firmer now, unmistakable. This was real, his fantasy, my nightmare. My throat tightened. No friends, no classes, no mother willing to speak to me. A boyfriend who thought my pain was a pathway to his desires. I'd never felt so alone, even when my father died. Even when I'd cried in my dorm room, unsure how to pay rent. Even when old breakups hurt more than they should have. Nothing compared to this. This was a loneliness that hollowed me out. I remember curling into a ball, sobbing silently into Henry's pillow so he wouldn't wake up. Tears soaked the pillowcase, a dark patch spreading under my cheek. My whole body shook. In that moment, I genuinely wondered if I was losing my mind. If the fog in my head was alcohol withdrawal, hormonal overload, depression, or a chemical cocktail of all three. If I had any pieces of myself left that weren't shaped by Henry's expectations. The darkest thought slipped in quietly. What if I miss the deadline because I'm too weak to speak up again? What if I ruin my life because I'm too afraid of disappointing a man? What if I become the vessel he wants, and never myself again? The thought terrified me so much I curled tighter, shaking until my ribs ached. The moment I hit bottom. 2 days before the appointment, I woke up from a nightmare, heart racing, shirt damp with sweat. My chest hurt from how tight I'd been holding myself. Henry wasn't in bed. For a moment, I felt relief. Then I heard something, a sound from the bathroom, water running. I sat up slowly. When he came out, he was smiling. "Hey," he whispered. "I was getting a towel warm for you. Thought it might help with the cramps." I stared at him. This man who fed me, rubbed my back, cleaned the apartment, slept curled around me, said he loved me. This man who was killing me with kindness. I felt myself unravel. "Henry," I said, voice sharp and trembling, "I'm drowning." He froze in the doorway. "I'm losing myself," I whispered, "and you're watching it happen." His eyes widened. "Baby." I'm not okay. It burst out of me like a scream, even though my voice never rose above a whisper. I began sobbing, ugly, broken sobs that tore at my throat. My body shook with the force of it. Henry rushed to me. Hey, shh, don't cry. Come here, sweetheart." He wrapped his arms around me, pulling me into his chest. I went rigid. Because in that moment, the truth hit me so hard it knocked the breath out of my lungs. Henry wasn't my safe place. He was the storm, and I was drowning in him. That realization, that unbearable clarity, was my lowest point. The moment I finally understood, if I didn't crawl out now, I wasn't going to survive this. The turning point didn't arrive as a revelation. It arrived as a decision I didn't realize I was making until it had already happened. It began the moment I woke up. I opened my eyes to find Henry already awake beside me, propped on an elbow, watching me sleep. He smiled softly when he realized I was conscious, but his eyes scanned my chest before my face. That tiny flicker of attention, barely a second, snapped something inside me. I felt myself detach, not angrily, not dramatically, quietly. I sat up and said, "I need to call the clinic." Henry blinked. "Right now? It's early." "I'm calling today." His smile faltered. We still have a few days before the appointment. Maybe we should wait." "No," the word came out steady, unshakable. "For what, Henry?" I asked, turning to look directly at him. "What else are we waiting for?" He froze, searching for an answer that didn't exist. I stood, grabbed my sweatshirt from the chair, and walked to the living room. My legs were shaky, but I felt more grounded than I had in weeks. When I took out my phone and dialed the clinic, my fingers trembled. A nurse answered. I cleared my throat. "Hi, I'm calling to confirm my procedure, and I want to check if there are earlier openings." The nurse checked the schedule. "We have a cancellation for tomorrow morning." "Tomorrow." My heart thudded so hard I swore the nurse could hear it through the phone. "I'll take it," I whispered. When I hung up, the living room felt brighter, like the air itself shifted. Henry walked in a moment later. "You were gone a while," he said carefully. "Everything okay?" "I moved the appointment," I said. "It's tomorrow." His breath hitched. "Tomorrow?" "Yes." He looked like someone had punched a hole in his chest. Why? We agreed on this week. We weren't rushing. We were going to... I'm done waiting, I said. I'm not risking anything. He swallowed, his throat bobbing. But tomorrow? That's sudden. It's not sudden. I've been pregnant for months. He looked down, fingers curling into fists. I just thought we said 18 weeks. That's still 2 days away. We had a plan. No, I corrected softly. You had a plan. My plan was survival. His face twisted. That's not fair. It's not supposed to be fair. It's supposed to be mine. He stared at me, disbelief flickering into something sharper. Then, quietly, you don't have to do this. Not today. Not tomorrow. We can talk. Just talk. Please. Once, that soft, pleading tone would have undone me. But not now. I'm going, I said. And you can come with me or not. But I'm going. He looked like he wanted to shout. Instead, he strode to the bedroom, slamming the door behind him. I expected him to rage, to beg, to sulk. Instead, 10 minutes later, he walked out with swollen eyes, shoulders hunched, holding 2 mugs of tea like a peace offering. I'm sorry, he whispered. I'm just hurting. For a moment, the old guilt sparked inside me. He looked so small, so vulnerable, so heartbreakingly earnest. I almost softened. Almost. He set the tea down and gently took my hands. I do love you, he said. This wasn't just about the thing. It was about us. Something intimate. Something only we could share. I swallowed hard, but it wasn't something I wanted. He closed his eyes, exhaling shakily. I know, and I'm sorry. I pushed it too far. I didn't see what it was doing to you. He pulled me into his chest. I let the hug happen, not because I wanted it, but because resisting felt like too much energy. We'll go tomorrow, he whispered. Together. Tomorrow. The word wrapped around me like a lifeline. I closed my eyes and breathed for what felt like the first time in weeks. Then came the real turning point. That evening, I called my mom. Not for support, not for advice, not for comfort. Just so someone knew. The phone rang twice. She answered with a clipped, yes. Mom, I said quietly, I have the appointment tomorrow. Silence. Then, do you need someone to drive you? I blinked. Her tone wasn't warm, but it wasn't cruel either. It was neutral, functional. I'm okay, I said. Henry's coming. A long pause. Good, she said. Call me afterward. I nodded, even though she couldn't see. When I hung up, something settled in me. Not peace, not closure, but resolve. I was taking back control, even if no one applauded, even if no one helped, even if I had to drag myself across that finish line alone. The quiet empowerment. That night, as I lay beside Henry, something profound happened. I didn't flinch when he touched me. I didn't freeze when he kissed my shoulder. I didn't shrink when he whispered, I'm scared of losing you. Because finally, I understood something that had been foggy for months. I didn't owe him my fear. I didn't owe him my body. I didn't owe him another week, another day, another breath of hesitation. The appointment was happening. My decision had been made. And for the first time, I felt like I was steering the story again, not drifting through it like a leaf in someone else's current. Tomorrow was the beginning of the end, and the beginning of finally coming back to myself. The morning of the procedure arrived with a cold, sharp silence. Not tension, not fear, just silence. I got dressed slowly, pulling on soft leggings and an oversized sweatshirt. My hands shook a little when I tied my shoes, not from regret, but from the weight of everything this day meant. Henry hovered near the door, keys in his hand, too attentive, too careful, too gentle. You ready? He asked softly. No, not emotionally, not physically, not in any spiritual sense. But I nodded. Yeah. The drive was suffocating. Henry kept glancing at me like he was afraid I'd disappear. Or maybe he was afraid the version of me he controlled was already gone. Halfway to the clinic, he whispered, I really am sorry, you know. I stared out the window. Buildings blurred by, like watercolor. I know, I said. But I also knew something he didn't. Being sorry does not erase harm. Being sorry does not return time. Being sorry does not rewind a pregnancy. The rest of the drive passed in heavy silence. When we reached the clinic, he tried to hold my hand in the waiting room. I let him, not out of love, but out of momentum, out of numbness, because my mind had split itself into 2 parts. The girl sitting in this plastic chair, scared and exhausted, and the woman rising from the wreckage, steady and resolute. The procedure happened. It was clinical, cold, methodical. I won't describe it. But afterward, when I woke up groggy with a warm blanket on my lap, Henry was sitting beside the bed, gripping my hand with both of his. He looked like a man trying to hold on to something slipping through his fingers. You're okay, he whispered. I'm here. I'm not going anywhere. But something inside me whispered back, I am. The recovery days showed the truth. Henry took time off work. He brought water, snacks, medication. He cleaned the apartment. He helped me to the bathroom. He hovered with a devotion that would have felt comforting once. Now it just felt like penance. I'll take care of you, he kept saying. I'll make this right. But every time he said right, something twisted in my stomach. Because right didn't mean understanding. It meant smoothing over his guilt, resetting the dynamic, restoring the version of me who didn't question him. He didn't want healing. He wanted forgetting. One afternoon, while I lay on the couch with a heating pad pressed to my abdomen, he sat on the floor beside me, leaning his head against my knee. I've been thinking, he said. When you're feeling better, maybe we could go somewhere. Just us. Reset. Reconnect. I stared at the ceiling. Henry! And this is crazy, but I managed to get Taylor Swift tickets. 4 months from now. For us. I know how much you wanted. Henry, I said again, more firmly. He stopped mid-sentence. I pulled the heating pad away, sat up slowly, wincing. Stop trying to fix this with vacations and concerts. This isn't about a fun distraction. He blinked, confused. I'm trying to make you happy. But you're not listening, I whispered. You're trying to repair your version of us, not the truth of what happened. His jaw tightened. I've apologized 100 times. I know, I said, but you don't understand what you did. He recoiled slightly. You pressured me, I said. Not violently, not angrily, but softly, constantly. You made my body into something you hoped it would become. You treated my fear like an inconvenience. That's not fair, he whispered, voice cracking. I was excited, yeah, but I didn't want to hurt you. But you did, I said simply. He opened his mouth, closed it, then whispered, So, what does that mean? Are you leaving? Is that what you're doing? I didn't answer. Not yet. Not because I didn't know, but because the words hadn't formed fully inside me. The fallout began quietly. Henry sensed it. The shift in me, the emotional distance, the new silence, the boundaries forming like invisible walls. He reached for my hand more often. I let him less often. He kissed my forehead. I turned slightly away. He slipped an arm around my waist at night. I inched toward the edge of the bed. He noticed everything, every flinch, every pause, every gentle rejection. Do you not love me anymore? He asked one night, voice small. The truth hung in the air like fog. I don't know, I whispered, and it was true. Not because the love was gone, but because the safety was. You cannot love someone the same way after they make your body a battleground. He looked shattered, but something inside me felt calm. Not happy, not relieved, just steady. For the first time in months, steady. Then came the discovery that changed everything. While Henry was out getting groceries, I cleaned the bathroom. It was the first time I'd had the strength to do anything physical since the procedure. I opened the trash bin to empty it and froze. Inside, at the bottom, was an old birth control pill pack, one of mine. 3 pills were still inside, but not taken, not missing. Pushed through the foil, crushed in the back, thrown away. A chill raced through me. I didn't want to believe it. I told myself maybe I'd done it accidentally. Maybe I'd been careless. Maybe it was a coincidence. But something deep in my chest whispered, check the other trash. So I did. In the bedroom trash can, I found 2 more empty packs, both with pills pushed through the back. Not taken, not swallowed, just gone. My breathing fractured, my vision blurred, my knees nearly buckled. Because suddenly the timeline made horrible sense. The nausea, the dizziness, the unexpected pregnancy, the immediate fetish conversation, the constant pressure, the 1-week delays, the fixation on timing. I dropped the trash bag. It hit the floor with the hollow thud that echoed through the room. In that instant, something inside me went cold. Not scared, not angry. Cold. Because now I knew something I couldn't unknow. This wasn't just pressure. This wasn't just fetish. This wasn't just waiting. This was sabotage, control, manipulation buried under sweetness. Whether intentional or desperate or compulsive, I no longer cared. Because the truth was simple. I couldn't stay. Not physically, not emotionally, not safely. The fallout was inevitable. That night, when Henry talked about cooking dinner together, when he kissed my cheek, when he whispered, "We're stronger now, right?" I knew the answer, but I didn't say it. Not yet. Because leaving someone who has slowly taken ownership of your body feels like escaping a house with invisible locks. You open the door quietly, softly. You don't announce your departure. You just walk out. And I was already walking. Leaving didn't happen with a suitcase in my hand. There was no dramatic confrontation, No screaming, no slamming door. It happened quietly, almost tenderly. I told Henry I needed to visit my mom more, that recovering physically and emotionally felt easier in a different space. He nodded, worried but supportive, the way he always looked when he thought he was still the hero of the story. He didn't know I'd already started keeping a small bag at my mother's, or that I spent hours sitting in her spare room staring at the wall because it was the first place I'd felt safe in months, or that every time I returned to Henry's apartment, my body instinctively curled inward, like my ribs were learning to armor themselves. 2 weeks after the procedure, I walked into that spare room and stood there, staring at the quiet bed, the thin curtains, the soft afternoon light pooling on the floor. For the first time since everything began, I felt my lungs fill fully. My mother didn't ask questions. She simply said, "You can stay." And I did. When I called Henry that night, his voice cracked instantly. Are you leaving me?" I closed my eyes. My hand shook, but my voice didn't. "I need space to heal," I said softly. "Space to think. Space to remember who I am when I'm not terrified of disappointing someone." He began apologizing again. Long, tangled apologies that once would have wrapped around my heart like blankets. Now they sounded like chains. "I need time," I repeated. "Please respect that." For once, he didn't push. He just whispered, "I love you. I didn't mean to hurt you." "I know," I said, "but intention doesn't erase impact." There was a long silence on the line, a silence full of endings. And then we both hung up. I didn't cry. Not that night, not the next one. Instead, I rested. I breathed. I let myself exist without being watched, measured, studied. The months ahead weren't glamorous. Recovery wasn't linear. My body took time to settle. My mind took even longer. But I learned something I wish I'd known years ago. Love is not built on how much of yourself you can sacrifice to keep someone comfortable. Love is built on safety, respect, and autonomy. If someone needs your silence to stay happy, if someone needs your body to fulfill their fantasies, if someone needs your boundaries softened until they disappear, that isn't love. That's ownership dressed in affection. And it will hollow you out from the inside until you no longer recognize your own reflection. In the end, my healing didn't come from apologies, or closure, or even justice. It came from choosing myself, from saying no more, even when my voice trembled, from stepping away before I drowned completely, from remembering that my body is not a negotiation. My lesson? When your life starts to dim one compromise at a time, when someone's desires eclipse your needs, when you feel yourself shrinking just to fit inside their comfort, that's when you walk away. Not because you don't love them, but because you finally remember to love yourself more. And that realization, quiet, steady, life-saving, is how my story ends. Not in tragedy, not in shame, but in reclamation, in breathing again, in choosing a future that belongs to me.